The neon-drenched streets of New Haven reflected in puddles of acid rain as Rylan Thorne nursed his wounds in the corner of the Rusty Gear Tavern. The former peacekeeper's cybernetic eye whirred softly, scanning the room for potential threats, an old habit he couldn't shake even 3 years after his discharge. The patrons, a mix of smugglers and outcasts, gave him a wide berth. His reputation preceded him, the man who turned his back on the peacekeepers during the Mars uprising. The holoscreen above the bar flickered with propaganda from the Nexus Syndicate, the corporate empire that had filled the power vacuum after Earth's governments collapsed. Their latest announcement made Ryland's artificial hand clench around his glass, the public execution of Julian Blackwood, scheduled for dawn. "Another hero falls," muttered Otto, the aged bartender, wiping down the counter with a grimy cloth. "Remember when the Blackwoods stood for something, before the Syndicate branded them traitors?" Ryland remained silent, but his mind raced. The Blackwoods had been more than just another wealthy family. They were pioneers in humanitarian technology, developing medical advances that they distributed freely to the colonies. Their fall from grace had been spectacular, orchestrated by the Syndicate in a campaign of carefully crafted lies. A figure in a tattered cloak slipped onto the stool beside him, movement too graceful for the usual riffraff. "I hear you're the man to see about impossible jobs," a feminine voice whispered, just loud enough to reach his ears. "Not interested," Ryland growled, but his cybernetic eye was already analyzing her vital signs, elevated heart rate, slight tremor in her hands. She was afraid but determined. Even if it means stopping the Syndicate from acquiring the Blackwood archives. That got his attention. He turned, catching a glimpse of fierce green eyes under the hood. "You're not just some random messenger, are you?" She pulled back her hood slightly, revealing a face that had been plastered across every wanted bulletin in the system. Senna Blackwood, the youngest daughter, supposedly killed in the raid on their estate. "They have my sister, Lyra," Senna said, her voice barely containing her emotion. "She's being held in the Obsidian Tower. Tomorrow's execution, it's not my father they're going to kill." Ryland's mechanical eye processed the implications. The Syndicate was planning to execute Lyra Blackwood while pretending it was Julian, probably to flush out any remaining family members. And here sat Senna, walking right into his lap. "Why me?" he asked, though he already suspected the answer. "Because you're the only peacekeeper who ever stood up to them, the only one who saw through their lies during the uprising." She leaned closer, her voice dropping further. "And because you have nothing left to lose." She was wrong about that last part. He had his anonymity, his quiet existence in the shadows. Taking on the Syndicate meant throwing that away, painting a target on his back that would never fade. But as he looked at her, he saw something that stirred memories he'd tried to drown in cheap synthahol hope. The same hope he'd seen in the eyes of the Mars colonists before the Syndicate crushed their bid for independence. "The Obsidian Tower is a fortress," he said, running scenarios through his tactical implants. "Automated defense systems, neural-linked guards, quantum encryption on every door." "I have access codes," Senna replied, sliding a data chip across the bar. "From someone inside, someone who wants to see the Syndicate fall as much as I do." Ryland picked up the chip, letting his cybernetic systems analyze it. The encryption was genuine Syndicate protocol. Either this was legitimate, or it was the most elaborate trap he'd ever seen. "You understand what you're asking," he said, pocketing the chip. "If we fail, it's not just death. The Syndicate's mindscrapers will peel every secret from our brains while we scream." Senna's jaw tightened. "I watched them murder my mother, watched them turn our legacy into a weapon against humanity. I understand exactly what I'm asking." Ryland signaled Otto for another drink, buying time to think. The smart play was to walk away. But something about Senna's determination, about the chance to finally strike back at the system that had corrupted everything he once protected. "I'll need equipment," he said finally. "My old gear is cached in a secure location, and we'll need a plan B through Z because nothing ever goes smooth with the Syndicate." Relief flooded Senna's features, quickly masked by determination. "I have credits, and contacts who can get us whatever we need." "First rule," Ryland stood, dropping credits on the bar. "Trust no one, your contacts, forget them, from now on we work alone." They slipped out of the rusty gear into the neon-lit night. Above them, the Obsidian Tower pierced the smog layer like a black needle, its surface reflecting the city's glow. Somewhere in there, Lyra Blackwood awaited execution, and the Syndicate's forces stood ready for anyone foolish enough to attempt a rescue. Rylan led Senna through a maze of back alleys to his bolt hole, a converted maintenance shaft in the city's underbelly. As his security system scanned them for surveillance devices, he began pulling out equipment he'd hoped never to use again. Chameleon mesh armor, neural disruptors, and his pride and joy. A custom-modified pulse rifle that could punch through military-grade shields. "We have 12 hours," he said, checking power cells and calibrating sights. "Tell me everything you know about the tower's security. Every detail matters." As Senna began describing guard rotations and security protocols, Ryland felt the familiar surge of premission focus, his augmentations humming to life. He was back in the game, but this time he wasn't fighting for a corrupt system. This time he was fighting to save something worth saving. Dawn approached New Haven, and with it, the promise of either redemption or oblivion. For Ryland Thorne and Senna Blackwood, there would be no middle ground. The underground bunker hummed with the sound of recycled air and whispered conversations as Rylan guided Senna through the darkened corridors. The rescue mission had succeeded beyond their wildest expectations, but it had also painted an enormous target on their backs. Lyra Blackwood walked beside her sister, her movements still unsteady from the neural suppressants the Syndicate had pumped into her system. "Your contact had better be trustworthy," Rylan muttered, his cybernetic eye continuously scanning for threats. The bunker belonged to someone known only as Cassius Vale, a name whispered in resistance circles with equal parts reverence and fear. "He's the only one who stood by our family when the Syndicate destroyed our reputation," Senna replied, supporting her sister's weight. "And he has resources we desperately need." The rescue from the Obsidian Tower had left its mark on all of them. Ryland's chameleon mesh armor bore plasma burns along the left side, and dried blood caked the circuitry of his artificial hand. But they'd made it out, barely, leaving chaos and confusion in their wake. A door slid open at the end of the corridor, revealing a chamber filled with holographic displays and ancient paper books, a rare sight in the digital age. A figure stood with his back to them, studying a projection of New Haven's security grid. "The Syndicate's already adapted their security protocols," the man said without turning. "Impressive work, though, breaking into the Obsidian Tower. That will be talked about for years." He turned, revealing a face marked by old burn scars and eyes that held both wisdom and calculation. "I'm Cassius Vale. Welcome to the real resistance." Ryland's tactical systems immediately cataloged potential threats and escape routes. Cassius might project in scholarly air, but the way he moved spoke of military training. "The resistance," Lyra spoke for the first time since their escape, her voice hoarse. "I thought they crushed all organized opposition years ago." Cassius smiled, gesturing to the displays around them. "They tried, but you can't kill an idea, especially when that idea is freedom." He walked to a cabinet, retrieving medical supplies. "You should treat those wounds. We have much to discuss." As Senna tended to her sister's injuries, Rylan kept his distance, watching. His instincts screamed that they were missing something crucial. "Why help us?" he asked Cassius. "What's your stake in this?" "The same as yours, Peacekeeper, redemption." Cassius activated another hologram, this one showing the structure of the Syndicate's leadership. "But more importantly, I need your help. The Syndicate's power isn't just political or military, it's based on technology they stole from families like the Blackwoods, technology that could either save humanity or enslave it forever." Senna's head snapped up. "The quantum consciousness interface, my father's last project." "Precisely," Cassius nodded. "The Syndicate didn't just want to destroy your family, they wanted your research. The ability to link human minds directly to their networks, creating perfect control." Ryland's artificial eye whirred as it processed this information. "That's impossible. The human brain can't handle that kind of direct interface. It would cause complete neural collapse." "Unless," Lyra spoke up, her voice stronger, "you use the stabilization protocols our father developed, the ones they tortured me to try to obtain." She met Cassius's gaze. "But I never broke, and now they'll be hunting us with everything they have." As if to emphasize her point, alarms suddenly blared throughout the bunker. Cassius rushed to a console, his fingers flying over the controls. "We've got incoming. Dominic Voss, the Syndicate's top hunter. Somehow he tracked you here." Ryland's combat systems surged online at the name. Dominic Voss was a legend among peacekeepers, a man who never failed to catch his prey. "How long?" "Minutes, maybe less." Cassius hit a series of commands, and sections of the wall slid open to reveal weapons and equipment. "There's a secure exit through the maintenance tunnels. Take what you need." Senna helped Lyra to her feet while Rylan grabbed additional ammunition and medical supplies, but something still bothered him. "You're not coming." Cassius shook his head, drawing an old-style projectile pistol. "Someone has to slow them down. Besides, I've been preparing for this day for years." He handed Senna a data crystal. "Everything you need to know is on here: safe houses, contacts, and most importantly, the location of your father's backup servers. Find them. Stop the Syndicate from completing the interface." Before they could argue, explosions rocked the bunker. Through the security feeds, they could see Syndicate forces breaching the outer defenses, led by a figure in matte black combat armor, Dominic Voss himself. "Go," Cassius ordered, taking up position behind a reinforced barrier. "And Rylan, take care of them. They're more important than you know." Rylan hesitated for a split second, then grabbed Senna's arm. "We move now." They sprinted for the escape tunnel as gunfire erupted behind them. Through his enhanced hearing, Rylan caught Cassius's last words to their pursuer. "Hello, old friend. Let's see if you remember what I taught you." The maintenance tunnels were a maze of pipes and conduits, lit only by emergency strips and the glow of Rylan's cybernetic eye. They ran until Lyra's strength gave out, forcing them to rest in an abandoned pressure junction. As Senna checked her sister's vital signs, she looked at Rylan. "We can't keep running forever." "No," he agreed, scanning the tunnel network through his tactical systems. "We need a plan and answers." He looked at the data crystal Cassius had given them, starting with what's really on this thing and why the Syndicate is willing to tear apart the city to get it. Lyra leaned against the wall, her breathing steadier. "It's not just about the interface technology, there's something else. Something I saw in their files when they were," she swallowed hard, "working on me. They're afraid of something big enough to make them desperate." Senna squeezed her sister's hand. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together." She looked at Rylan, and he saw the same determination that had drawn him into this mission in the first place. "All of us." Rylan checked his weapons, mind already plotting their next move. The tunnels would take them to the outskirts of New Haven, where they might find transport off-world. But first, they needed to understand what they were really fighting for and against. Above them, the city's endless neon glow filtered through maintenance grates, casting shadows that seemed to move with a life of their own. Somewhere up there, Dominic Voss was hunting them, and the Syndicate's power grew by the hour. But for the first time in years, Rylan felt something he'd thought long dead: purpose. He looked at the Blackwood sisters, Senna's quiet strength, Lyra's resilience, and knew there would be no walking away from this fight. The ghosts of his past had led him here, and now they drove him forward toward whatever destiny awaited them in the stars. The resistance base on Europa's ice sheets should have been the perfect hiding place. Should have been. As alarms blared through the underground facility, Rylan knew they'd been betrayed. His cybernetic eye tracked multiple hostile signatures converging on their position, while his tactical systems calculated rapidly diminishing survival odds. "Senna, get Lyra to the emergency pods," he shouted over the comm link, his modified pulse rifle spitting death at the first wave of Syndicate troops. The 3 weeks they'd spent building this refuge, gathering allies, had just gone up in smoke. Through the facility's security feeds, he watched Senna leading her sister through the lower levels. Lyra had recovered her strength since their escape from New Haven, but the neural damage from her torture still slowed her movements. Behind them, resistance fighters engaged the Syndicate forces, buying time with their lives. "Someone gave them our location," Senna's voice crackled through the comm. "All our security protocols, defense positions, they knew everything." Rylan's artificial hand clenched around his weapon. He'd warned them about trusting too many people, about expanding too quickly. But the resistance had been desperate for a win after Cassius Vale's sacrifice, and the Blackwood sisters had offered hope. A figure appeared at the end of the corridor, Perseus, one of their newest recruits. His hands were raised, showing he was unarmed. "Rylan, they've breached the east wing. We need." Rylan's cybernetic eye caught the neural spike pattern before Perseus could finish. Without hesitation, he fired, the pulse blast taking Perseus in the chest. The man's body collapsed, revealing complex circuitry beneath synthetic skin. "It's Perseus," Rylan transmitted to the remaining defenders. "He's the mole, Syndicate infiltration unit." "Damn it," Senna's voice was tight with fury. "He had access to everything, all our plans, our backup sites." An explosion rocked the base, cutting off her transmission. Rylan's tactical display showed multiple breach points. They were being surrounded. "Get to the pods," he ordered, already moving. "I'll hold them here." Not without you, Senna replied, and he could hear the stubbornness in her voice. We started this together. Another explosion closer this time. Through the smoke, Rylan caught glimpses of Syndicate shock troops advancing. Their armor bore the personal insignia of Dominic Voss. The hunter had found them again. Rylan reached the lower levels just as Senna finished prepping an escape pod. Lyra worked at a console, her fingers flying over the controls as she downloaded their research data. The sisters had spent every spare moment analyzing the files from Cassius's data crystal, uncovering layers of conspiracy that went deeper than anyone had imagined. They're not just after the interface technology, Lyra said, her voice steady despite the chaos. The Syndicate, they found something out there in deep space, something that terrified them enough to start all of this. Save it for the pod, Rylan snapped, laying down covering fire as more troops breached the level. His tactical systems were tracking multiple neural signatures, more infiltration units like Perseus. Senna stepped up beside him, wielding the energy pistol he'd taught her to use. Her shots were precise, dropping Syndicate troops with practiced efficiency. In the weeks since their escape, she'd insisted on combat training, refusing to be defenseless again. Download complete, Lyra announced. But they're in the system, they'll be able to track any pod we launch. Rylan's mind raced through options, each worse than the last. Then he remembered something from his peacekeeper days, a trick that had saved his squad during the Mars uprising. The facility's reactor, he said. We can trigger a controlled overload. The electromagnetic pulse will fry their tracking systems. And every piece of technology in range, Senna added, understanding dawning, including your cybernetics. Rylan managed a grim smile. Only temporarily, the shielding should protect vital systems. More explosions shook the base. Through the security feeds, they watched Dominic Voss methodically advancing through their defenses, his enhanced troops clearing room after room with lethal precision. Do it, Senna decided, covering the corridor while Rylan accessed the reactor controls. The process took precious seconds, seconds they didn't have. Just as the final sequence initiated, a massive impact shook the pod bay. The reinforced doors buckled inward, revealing Dominic Voss himself. The hunter's combat armor was a work of art, every piece customized for maximum lethality. His helmet retracted, revealing a face Rylan knew from countless briefings and wanted bulletins. Impressive operation you've built here, Voss said, his voice carrying an almost respectful tone. But it's over. The Syndicate wants the Blackwood sisters alive. You Thorn they don't care about, last chance to walk away. Rylan's tactical systems screamed warnings. Voss's armor outclassed his in every way. Even with Senna's help, their odds were minimal. You know I can't do that, Rylan replied, shifting to put himself between Voss and the sisters. Can't or won't, Voss's expression showed genuine curiosity. You were one of our best, Thorn, what changed? I saw the truth about what the Syndicate really is, what they're really planning. The reactor warning klaxons began to sound. Voss's eyes narrowed as he realized what they'd done. The EMP will fry every system in range, Rylan continued. Including that fancy armor of yours, want to try your luck without it. For a moment, tension crackled between them, then Voss smiled a predator's smile. Another time, he stepped back, his helmet resealing. But remember this moment, Thorn, remember that I offered you a way out. The hunter vanished into the smoke as Rylan's cybernetic systems began registering the reactor's imminent overload. They had less than a minute. Into the pod now, he shouted, laying down suppressing fire as Senna and Lyra scrambled inside. He backed in after them, sealing the hatch just as the reactor went critical. The electromagnetic pulse hit like a hammer, shorting out systems throughout the pod. Rylan's cybernetics went dark, leaving him momentarily blind on his artificial side. The pod's emergency thrusters fired automatically, launching them away from the disintegrating base. As they punched through Europa's ice layer into space, Rylan felt Senna's hand find his in the darkness. Lyra worked to restore basic systems, her breathing steady despite their narrow escape. That was too close, Senna said softly. It's not over, Rylan replied, his cybernetics slowly rebooting. Voss will be back, and now we've lost our last safe haven. Not quite, Lyra spoke up, examining data on a portable screen. I found something in Father's files, coordinates to a research facility in the Kuiper Belt, if we're right about what the Syndicate found out there. Then that's where we'll find our answers, Senna finished. Rylan nodded, already plotting courses in his head. The Kuiper Belt was the edge of mapped space, the perfect place to hide something you didn't want found. But first, they needed repairs, supplies, and most importantly, a plan. The pod systems gradually came back online, revealing the glittering expanse of space before them. Somewhere out there, the truth waited, and this time they would be ready. The research facility hung in the void of the Kuiper Belt like a forgotten dream, its darkened modules barely visible against the star field. Rylan guided their salvaged ship, the Phoenix, through a field of debris, his restored cybernetics tracking every piece of floating wreckage. No power signatures, he reported, his artificial eye scanning the facility, but the structure's intact. Someone wanted this place preserved. Senna stood behind his pilot chair, one hand resting on his shoulder. The weeks of travel had changed her, hardened her edges while strengthening her core. Lyra sat at the science station, her fingers dancing across holographic displays as she analyzed the facility's composition. The outer hull is reinforced with quantum-locked alloys, Lyra said, wonder in her voice. This is far beyond anything we had when Father, she trailed off, the pain still fresh. They'd lost contact with their remaining resistance cells 2 days ago. Whether betrayal or destruction, the silence spoke volumes about the Syndicate's reach. There, Senna pointed to a section of the facility. That looks like a maintenance airlock, manual override possible. Rylan nodded, already adjusting their approach. The Phoenix was a creature of compromise, a deep space tug modified with military-grade systems scrounged from dead ships. It wasn't pretty, but it had gotten them here. The airlock cycle was agonizingly slow, each clank and hiss setting their nerves on edge. When the inner doors finally opened, their helmet lights revealed corridors untouched for decades. Split up, Rylan suggested, cover more ground. No, Senna's voice was firm. We stay together, the Syndicate found us too easily last time. They moved through the facility as one unit, checking rooms filled with dust-covered equipment and dormant computer terminals. Rylan's tactical systems mapped their progress while scanning for threats. In what appeared to be a central laboratory, they found their first real clue. A holographic projector hummed to life at their approach, powered by its own isolated reactor. A figure materialized, an older man with Senna's eyes and Lyra's determined jaw. Father, Lyra whispered. The hologram spoke. If you're seeing this, then the worst has happened. The Syndicate has moved against us, trying to suppress what we discovered, what's coming for us all. Senna stepped forward, her hand passing through the image. This was recorded just before the purge, before they destroyed our family. The quantum consciousness interface was never meant to be a weapon, the hologram continued. It was meant to be our shield, because they're out there watching, waiting. The artifacts we found in the Uit cloud proved it, an ancient race far beyond our understanding, and they've judged us, found us wanting. Rylan's tactical systems highlighted something in the corner, a secured door, heavy enough to withstand a nuclear blast. What were you protecting? He muttered. The Syndicate believes control is the answer, Julian Blackwood's image continued. Force humanity to evolve through direct neural integration, create a unified consciousness they can direct. But they don't understand. The Watchers don't want slaves. They want to see if we can transcend our limitations on our own. The hologram flickered, showing signs of damage. The real interface is here, along with all our research, not to control but to connect, to show humanity a better path. Senna, Lyra, if you're seeing this, you know what to do, and whoever stands with you know that you fight for more than just revenge, you fight for our future. The message ended, leaving them in silence. Lyra moved to a computer terminal, her fingers trembling slightly as she worked. The security systems are independent, yes, access granted. The blast door opened with a hiss of preserved atmosphere. Inside, a single pedestal held what looked like a simple crystal matrix, glowing with its own inner light. The true interface, Senna breathed, not the Syndicate's corruption of it. Before they could reach it, proximity alarms blared from the Phoenix. Rylan's tactical display lit up with multiple signatures emerging from faster-than-light travel. Syndicate ships, he announced, at least 3 heavy cruisers, and his artificial eye zoomed in on a particular energy signature, Voss's personal transport. How? Lyra demanded. We were careful, we covered our trail. A new voice answered from the laboratory entrance, because I led them here. They spun to face a figure they'd thought dead in the Europa base attack. Cassius Vale stepped into the light, looking worn but very much alive. I'm sorry, he said, and he genuinely seemed to mean it. But the Syndicate has to win this. You don't understand what's really at stake. Ryland's weapon was up instantly, but Cassius made no aggressive moves. Explain, Ryland demanded. Now. The Watchers aren't just observing us, Cassius said. They're preparing to cleanse this sector of space. A process they've carried out countless times before when civilizations fail to meet their standards. The Syndicate's plan is the only way to force our evolution fast enough to survive. Through enslavement, Senna's voice was ice. Through destroying everything that makes us human. Better than extinction, Cassius spread his hands. Dominic is on his way, don't fight him, help us save humanity. Ryland's tactical systems were already plotting escape routes, but they all looked impossible. The Syndicate had them trapped. Then Lyra spoke up, her voice steady. Father's message wasn't just a recording, it was a key. She held up a data pad. I've accessed the facility's full database. The Watchers aren't preparing to destroy us. They're waiting to see if we'll destroy ourselves. Heavy footsteps echoed from the corridor, Voss and his troops approaching. Their time was running out. Choose now, Cassius urged, please. Ryland looked at Senna, saw the same determination he'd seen that first night in the bar. They'd come too far to surrender now. The crystal matrix on the pedestal pulsed, as if responding to their thoughts. And in that moment, they all understood what they had to do. The facility's walls seemed to fade away as Voss's forces breached the laboratory, setting up the final confrontation that would determine not just their fate, but humanity's future itself. The laboratory erupted into chaos as Dominic Voss and his elite squad breached the entrance. Ryland's combat systems engaged automatically, identifying threats and calculating trajectories, but he knew they were hopelessly outnumbered. The interface, Senna shouted over the weapon's fire. It's not just a connection, it's a choice. Lyra was already moving, her hands flying over the facility's controls. The Watchers left us a path, not to force evolution but to earn it. Voss strode through the firefight like a force of nature, his enhanced armor deflecting energy bolts. Stand down, he commanded. You have no idea what you're interfering with. We know exactly what we're doing, Ryland replied, placing himself between Voss and the sisters. The Syndicate's been lying to everyone, including you. The crystal matrix pulsed faster now, its light filling the chamber. Through his cybernetic eye, Ryland could see patterns in the energy like a language written in light itself. Cassius moved to Voss's side, his expression pained. The Syndicate's way ensures survival. Control is better than extinction. Is it? Senna challenged, her hand hovering near the matrix. Look at what that control has already cost us. Our humanity, our freedom to choose. Lyra's voice cut through the tension. The interface is ready, but we all have to choose. Even you, Voss, even you, Cassius. The Watchers want to see if we can bridge our divisions on our own. Voss raised his weapon, its targeting systems locked on Ryland. You're asking us to risk everything on faith. No, Ryland replied. On hope. The same hope that made me help Senna that first night. The hope that we can be better than our fears. The crystal's pulse had become a heartbeat, resonating through the chamber. Syndicate troops shifted uneasily as the energy patterns grew more complex. Sir, one of Voss's lieutenants reported, energy readings are off the scale, whatever they're planning. Will either save us or doom us, Cassius interrupted, but it has to be our choice, all of us. Senna met Voss's gaze. You were a peacekeeper once like Ryland, before the Syndicate twisted that duty into something else. Remember why you first put on that uniform. For a moment that felt like eternity, no one moved, then slowly Voss lowered his weapon. Stand down, he ordered his troops. The Syndicate will brand us all traitors, Cassius warned, but he was already moving toward the Matrix. Maybe, Ryland agreed, but we'll be free. They gathered around the crystal, former enemies united by a choice bigger than their differences. As their hands reached for the Matrix, Ryland felt Senna's fingers intertwine with his. The light engulfed them, and with it came understanding. The Watcher's gift wasn't technology or power, but perspective. Through the interface, they saw themselves as they could be, not a species divided by fear and control, but one united by the courage to choose a better path. The energy cascade spread from the facility, a wave of enlightenment that couldn't be stopped by distance or ideology. Across the solar system, humans felt the touch of possibility, the chance to transcend their limitations not through force but through choice. When the light faded, they found themselves changed. Not physically, but in the ways that mattered most. The neural technology that had been meant to enslave now served to connect, to help humanity understand itself and grow. The syndicate's power crumbled in the face of this new awareness. Their lies and manipulations couldn't stand against the truth that humanity had chosen its own path. Months later, Ryland stood with Senna on the observation deck of the rebuilt facility, now a center for human advancement and cooperation. Below them, ships arrived daily bringing people eager to learn, to grow, to help shape humanity's future. The Watchers still haven't shown themselves, he noted, his cybernetic eye tracking the movement of vessels through space. They don't need to, Senna replied, leaning against him. We proved ourselves by making the right choice, not out of fear but out of hope. Lyra emerged from a research lab, her face bright with excitement. The new connections are stabilizing. More people are joining the network every day, sharing knowledge, building understanding. And Voss, Rylan asked. Leading the reformation of the peacekeepers, Senna answered, turning them back into what they were meant to be, protectors, not controllers. Through the viewport, Earth glowed like a jewel against the darkness. Humanity had faced its trial and chosen wisdom over power, unity over division. The price of redemption had been high, but the reward was a future limited only by their imagination and courage. What now? Lyra asked, joining them at the viewport. Ryland smiled, feeling the pulse of human potential through his enhanced senses. Now we keep choosing, keep growing, keep proving the Watchers right about us. Senna squeezed his hand, and in that gesture was everything they'd fought for: love, trust, and the promise of a dawn that would never end. The stars seemed brighter somehow, witnessing humanity's first steps into a future they had earned through their own choices. And somewhere out there, the Watchers observed with approval as their latest children finally found their way home.